The vast majority of problems in the workplace can be solved with zero money and resources. All you have to do is talk to people. Just find out what makes them tick, where they're going, and try your best to actually care.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Optimal Instinct with Trish. I'm Trish Tangley, a business efficiency expert who uses a one-day summit to get your clients to stay longer, pay more, and refer more often while improving team morale. And today we have as our guest, Yuri Kruman. Yuri is the CHRO and Chief People Officer of Elite Healthcare Consultants and Principal Consultant and CEO of Master the Talk Consulting. He is a sought-after speaker and expert on HR, digital transformation, and the employee experience. Yuri is a Forbes Coaches Council member and contributor to Forbes, Entrepreneur, Business.com, Influensive, and a number of other top platforms. He has consulted and spoken at numerous Fortune 500 companies and top universities. He has appeared on network TV and top podcasts, including NBC's Tipping Point, Leadership and Loyalty Podcast, Entrepreneur on Fire, and Wharton Business Radio. He is the author of 2 books, the first being What Millennials Really Want from Work and Life, and the second, more recent one, Mastering the Talk to Master Your Life. A little known fact about Yuri is that he is from a small town near Moscow, Russia. And then his family moved eventually to Lexington, Kentucky, and now he's back up north in New York. Welcome, Yuri.
Thank you so much, Trish. It's great to meet you.
That is a pretty impressive bio you have there.
Well, I wrote it myself, so it must be good. No, I'm kidding.
That's great. So, okay, let's get right to the podcast because I'm sure this is going to be super interesting. What is a problem that you solve?
So the main problem that I solve is for CEOs facing people issues. They come to me to help figure out whether those stem from, let's say, productivity issues, whether they come from a bad employee experience, from any particular gaps in perception between what the employees want to do and what they're actually doing, for help with creating career pathways, and assorted other business process optimization work, starting with HR. So it's kind of a combination of people, culture, talent, and HR processes. Benefits and payroll and all those good things thrown in there.
Payroll. That is very important. Okay, so when you're working with your clients, all right, so that's a problem that you solve, but what do you think is a common mistake that they make before they hire you when they're trying to solve the problem on their own?
Well, problems are like this. I think that a lot of people that I work with, they're very talented, they're incredibly ambitious and motivated, and they're usually excellent at one or two areas. Either they're very good at creating a product, so whether that's a physical product or software or whatever it is, right? They're maybe coders, product managers, etc. Other types are, let's say they're great salespeople, right? So they can go and they can raise money like bonkers. They can go and, let's say, pre-sell their first few customers before they've built anything, right? But a lot of the time, they may not have the awareness, they may not have the mindset, they may not have the tools, the language of psychology to really understand their people. And to them, often, fast growth is an issue. I work a lot with fast growth companies. So CEOs in that chair normally think, oh, okay, well, how do we get bodies in seats? You have this kind of factory, this sausage kind of length,
Yes.
which is very unfortunate. People are anything but sausage. They don't really operate the way
Like a sausage.
a machine, right? So that's where the friction is the greatest, right? Between people setting expectations and not fulfilling them. Really, where I come in, if you can imagine that at the top of a company, you have a little bit of a distance between word and deed, often, right? Sometimes people are all, completely truthful, but that's probably not here on earth at the time. For the most part, everyone is involved in politics. They have their own budget to defend. They have their own hiring plan, their financial model, whatever it is, right? So everyone has a territory to defend, if you will. And a lot of the time, if we look and dig deep into the motivations of each kind of employee, the person at the top, the CEO, maybe the people in the C-suite, they're usually co-founders, if we're talking about fast growth companies. And, they have all the equity. They have all the motivation in the world to make this, very big company, maybe take it public, what have you. People in the middle, they may have a tiny bit of equity. They're probably in there for high pay because they are coming in as highly experienced professional managers. And, their whole premise is, hey, establish processes if it's very early, or maintain the status quo, right? Or, some kind of modest growth. Because if things are too out of control, then, well, you're going to be on the line. Mm-hmm. And if you're just starting out in your career, if you're an analyst, what have you, right? You're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and you want to learn and you want to, basically ready to jump into anything. So the incentives for those three groups are wildly different. And yet founders and people in the C-suite, unless they have a background in people, culture, talent, HR, generally don't have that awareness. They're just like, but come on, I'm paying you. Like, you should go and dance like
get it done.
Come on. What is this?
Yeah.
It doesn't work this way. Right. So in order to get people to do their life's best work, you have to incentivize them correctly. And that doesn't mean give them a foosball table or kind bars. That's not what good incentives are. And so every person for him or herself has to be a chief incentives officer. That's a nice idea. Most people are not. They're just reacting to what they have. But if you're at the head of a company, you should either appoint someone as that person or be that person yourself. Meaning you have to dig into each person's background and experience and where they are, where they're looking to go, what is their career pathway, where do they want to be in 5 or 10 years, right? And then work backwards and say, okay, well, while you're with me in this company, let's say we're working together for 2-3 years, which in the startup world is eons.
Yeah, exactly.
How do we figure out how to set you up to do your life's best work? Meaning, what are the conditions that you need? Okay, there's this pay. Pay is kind of, as long as it's livable, around 75K, I guess. There's supposedly no more happiness to be squeezed out. We can argue.
Yeah.
But, the point is basically, if a person feels like they have a path to get promoted, to get paid more, to learn, to contribute a lot, to be respected, to be recognized, right, to really feel safe psychologically and otherwise, their physical health is taken care of, their mental health is taken care of. Those are the conditions under which highly talented people that are highly motivated and clear on what they're doing and why they're here, those kinds of people tend to thrive and they tend to produce value in great excess to their total compensation. So putting all this together, basically, I come in and help the founders see things in this way, in a much more granular sense, help them to understand each person's incentives. I do coaching. So for me, that's a way to download a lot of information from people as to who they are, where they're going, what are pain points, what are frustrations. Yep. And I can right away think, okay, well, some of these things can be fixed with better systems, better processes, better software. A lot of other things, the vast majority of problems are in communication. You don't share. So if you're the CEO, you're kind of sit in your office. Oh, I just raised a massive round and now I have to go out and, sell big contracts and like, okay, little guy, like, your boss will take care of you, right? And as the company grows, there's less and less of this kind of communication flow, information, becomes stale by the time it reaches somebody, don't feel appreciated. And it just becomes a sausage factory. And that's unfortunately what happens often. So that's kind of my specialty, to come into a sausage factory and put the pieces back together and say, okay, we're all really humans. How do we create the systems and the mindset in order to build something even much greater?
Okay, what you do is really complex. And in the end, you summarized it pretty succinctly, where basically it's trying to turn sausages back into people, right? So I know it's terrible, but it adds a little humor to our podcast and a little humor to the topic, because the topic is definitely a serious one where people are often, they're called resources. And the term resources, over the years, you get positive and negative reactions to that term.
Sure.
So we are now using sausages. So, okay.
There's a great quote from Oscar Wilde. If you want to tell people the truth, make them laugh. Otherwise, they'll kill you.
Exactly. There you go. See, so we're making people laugh so that they'll continue listening and making sure that they pay attention to what you say. So with that, what is the number one tip? Okay, because I know, like I said, you cover quite a bit, but what is a number one tip that you can give a leader of a company or a stakeholder based on what you just said earlier?
I would say that 80% of all problems are caused by communication, either lack of communication or bad communication, or people just don't feel like, hey, you're not asking me, what do I care? What do I want? Where am I going? Right? And when they feel not cared for, they feel also not respected. And all of this devolves into a nasty, vicious cycle where people start leaving because, hey, greener pastures. The talent market is hot and hotter, right?
Yep.
So unless you do things the right way, meaning at the very least, take the time to talk to me, understand who I am, I have a family, all of us are human, right? Unless you do that, you already lost me. And we're talking about in the first encounter, never mind onboarding 2, 3 down the road. So the vast majority of problems in the workplace can be solved with zero money and resources. All you have to do is talk to people. Just find out what makes them tick, where they're going, and try your best to actually care, not just pretend to show that you care.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with you. If you treat people like they are people and get to know them, you get a lot more out of them and you go further with them than the 2-3 years that is the expected job life, especially in the digital and technology markets. So is there a free resource that you would like to share?
Yeah, depending on what the listener's focus is. As I mentioned, I work a lot with fast growth companies and larger companies as well. So there's a resource that breaks down sort of where the biggest gaps are in terms of employee experience and people, talent, culture, HR, more for larger companies, more Fortune 500 companies. So I'm sure you're able to provide the link for that. Another one, if the listener is more on the early stage entrepreneur side, often there's a great need for growth hacking tips, right? Meaning, how do I build a bigger brand than where I really am now so that I can get bigger clients, more revenue and get going. So that's called Growth Hacking Gold. I'm sure you have that link as well.
Okay, great. So we'll make sure that the show notes have that so that they can access that information from you. Now, for the last question on this podcast, what should I have asked you that I did not?
Wow. We'll be here all evening, but to tell you that, I would say that maybe something about my book that I'm finishing up and hope to have out later this year. Mastering the Talk to Master Your Life. So that would be the question that I would have asked myself.
Okay. And is there anything else about your book that you would like to share? Like a little gist?
Very, very briefly.
Yes.
So, there's no shortage of self-help books out there, whether around health, mental models, dealing with other people. And then there's kind of the fourth angle of spirituality, right? How do you derive benefit, not to sound utilitarian, but, from the spiritual side of things. So the book that I'm writing talks about 4 conversations. Instead of just, people ask me, teach me to negotiate or teach me to ace the interview, all this kind of like sexy stuff, quote unquote. Right? How do I deal with other people? How do I make the best of us? But there are really 3 other conversations that all of us should be having at the same time. I feel like that in some ways is what's novel about my approach and why I felt so compelled to share it. And the other 3, just very briefly, the first conversation is with your body. You need to understand what you have, everything from body type, metabolism. We're not even talking about peak performance. We're just talking about basics of how can I be in the best state possible in order for me to enter a higher cognitive state where I can do the best work of my life. And the second conversation is in your own mind. Who am I? Where am I going? What am I meant to do? And that looks at things like mental models, right? So what are my biases? What are the notions that cripple me? Right? How do I get those out and address them? Everything through how to basically run your career and how to run a business and how to run your finances. It's not meant to be authoritative on all those subjects, but really just to set up your life in a way that allows you to, again, enter that higher cognitive state regularly without being bogged down and putting out fires all over the place, and to be able to really do the best work of your life, which is to help people through the channel that you're supposed to. So we mentioned dealing with other people. There's obviously a lot about that, and that goes into my coaching and consulting. The last piece, this is one that I would say most people tend to avoid because it's kind of this. You don't talk about religion at work. You don't talk about. For me, it's not so much about religion. It's more about saying, okay, there are certain rules in life, moral, ethical, etc. I happen to subscribe to the set of rules and rituals and observances under Judaism. So for me, that is something that informs my life through and through. It is not something that takes over my reason or anything like that. Right? There's a tendency to talk about religion as some kind of, opium for the masses and all that stuff. And, I'm from the Soviet Union, so I heard it more than most. But I found it to be just the opposite, right? In our modern world, there's no way to live without having a spiritual essence in your life. You have to understand who you are and what your mission is and why me? Why did you put me, through all of this in order for you to grasp that and go and help other people? Because otherwise, if you don't have the right orientation, the right moral compass and otherwise, you're lost. You have no idea where you're going or what this is all for. And most people, unfortunately, tend to either kind of put it to the side. On the one hand, it's like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm a millennial, don't bother me. Or the opposite, right? I'm, fundamentalist and this is everything and, forget reason. I don't believe in that approach. But for me, those 4 conversations are paramount. And to have with myself every single day, every week, every month, year, and on an ongoing basis. There's a way to track these things and really understand how am I doing. And not in a way that, I need to beat myself up, but rather, okay, I forgive myself. I've made a lot of mistakes and many, many more than you can imagine in every area of life. But, you iterate, you get better, and you hope to pass on something that's better to your kids. And that's where I am in life at this moment.
So basically, if I can sum it up, it's almost like looking at your life from these 4 aspects at a 3,000-foot view and understanding yourself from that perspective so that you can move yourself forward.
Let me give you an even more exact image. Imagine you have a drone. What is a drone? A drone is something that has 4 propellers, right, that have to be very carefully managed, right? So you have a remote, right, that it can control the way it accelerates, decelerates, goes up, goes down. And if you think about the 4 propellers, that's exactly what these 4 talks are. In order for the drone to fly very high, so it gives you this very high level view of your own topology, mental and physical and otherwise, you need to understand, okay, where is my place in the world? In order for you to be able to do that, to zoom in and zoom out and even get off the ground, you have to have all 4 running. If you have only 3, which is already a lot, that's what I'm asking for. If you take care of your body, if you take care of your mind, and you're good with other people, I'm good, I'm set. No, you still won't get off the ground. You're not going to get there because you don't really know what is this all for. Right? So with all 4 running, you keep things all 4 in good shape. We're able to really see from a high level and zoom down very, very close into any one area of life. And that kind of ability is what keeps you healthy and sane and productive and moving towards your vision and purpose. That's the image I like to give.
Yeah, well, the drone was definitely a really good image for that. All right, we have arrived at the end of the podcast. This is a very interesting podcast and funny too. And I'd like to thank you very much for being a guest on my show. And everyone, like I said, just wait for this podcast to be published. And definitely we will get you the download from Yuri to make sure that you are optimal with your performance. And again, Yuri, thank you so much for being on the show. It was my pleasure. And hopefully we will be speaking again soon.
Really. Thank you very much, Trish.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much for joining us on Optimal Instinct with Trish. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, head on over to iTunes, subscribe, and if you really enjoy the content, leave us a well-appreciated review. If you are looking to create an environment that partners your desire for more profitable, more productive, and greater referability in client relationships, combined with sustained team morale, then I suggest you head over to clientvaluedemo.com to learn more about the C's value model. Talk soon.